the shame we feel about ourselves is never going to be fixed by somebody else. It's that acceptance work in the middle that allows you to sit there and go, oh my God, wait, I can be a good person who does stupid things. That both of those can be true at the same time. I can be a worthwhile person to be in relationships and not really know how to do it right now, right? All of that can be true at the same time. And yesterday and the drinking was proof of that. Okay, got it. Now, so explore, accept, transform. Once you've landed in some version of acceptance, the next thing is, how can I change? And that's, I think, what gets people out of shame is the idea that there is a better future, going back to growth mindset. If I keep practicing this and not running away from it, I can get better and I will get better over time.
Welcome, Adi, to the Heal Your Heartbreak podcast. Very excited to have you on today. I love talking about the connection between addiction and heartbreak. I just think there's so much crossover there. So I'm really excited to have you on today.
I love it. Thanks for having me on.
I always like to start off with some background of I'm very curious of how people land where they do in their subjects of career. So can you give us a little, I know you have a very interesting story. So could you give us a little background on what led you to this space?
Yeah. I definitely didn't have a straight line kind of shot into this career, certainly. I was 14 years old when I moved to the States with my family, and I struggled. I was kind of excited when you're not born in America, moving to the States, especially in the 90s, is kind of this holy grail moment, right? Oh my God, all this exciting stuff. My parents played it perfectly. They took us to Disney World like
Oh
the
my
first
gosh.
week we were in the States, but we moved to Chicago, a suburb of Chicago, Skokie, and I had some trouble adjusting. It was totally new language. I lived in the same apartment till I was 14. And so um all of a sudden brand new friends, language I barely spoke. People make fun of you. It's like you're the foreign kid in school, and it's already high school. It's already weird. And so, I tell people you may not realize it, but there's like a foreign kids table at your school if it's big enough and there's enough of us. And so you sit together because nobody really knows anybody, and you're trying to make relationships work and friendships. And one of the ways that I made that happen about, I'd say maybe 6 to 9 months in, was I went to a sleepaway camp. It was a Boy Scout, Israeli Boy Scout sleepaway camp. And I got exposed to alcohol there. I was sitting around late night. We're all hanging out, and somebody hands me this really warm bottle, like this jug of vodka. And I'll never forget it. I'm trying to look cool. I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm not going to tell these new people I just met that I don't drink, and I'm not going to say no. So I took one chug, and it's disgusting. I mean, nobody wants to drink warm vodka as an adult. When you're 14 years old, it's like the most disgust. I almost threw up, but just to prove myself, I took another big chug, and then I passed it on. I didn't even think anything about it, Kendra. And then 20 minutes later, it's like this, just this feeling washed over me. And I didn't feel weird and I didn't feel strange anymore. I didn't really care what people thought about me as much. I could talk to girls without being awkward. I even made out with a girl that night, which was like, for a weird 14-year-old, that was the holy grail. And so I left that weekend kind of thinking to myself, I found the cure. I don't have to feel awkward anymore. There's now this thing called alcohol. Um, and so I started drinking every weekend with my friends at parties. I started getting invited to the parties where people drank because now I wasn't as weird as I was before. 2 years later, pretty much the same thing. A girl I liked while we were sitting around late at night in a different school in upstate New York, passed a joint. Wasn't going to say no to her because I liked her, start smoking weed. By the time I got to college, I was smoking weed and drinking every day. And I continued that through college. And then I had a breakup, which is befitting the conversation we're going to have here. Went into this pretty serious depression, and it was like no holds barred. Use anything you can use to not feel the feelings you're having. And so the harder drugs came in, and the hallucinogens came in, and a lot of unhealthy coping behavior. And that started this trend until a couple of years later, I was selling drugs because I started using so much I couldn't afford them anymore. Selling drugs became a really profitable business. So when I graduated college, I didn't even go get a job. I actually bought a suit to go on consulting interviews, but I was making like 7 to 8 thousand net a month. It's like $100,000 a year for a kid coming out of college. I was like, screw the jobs. I'm going to
Yeah.
keep doing this. Um, Sounded like a smart idea at the time. Turns out 2 years later, actually 3 years after that, I got arrested by the Beverly Hills SWAT team arrest. It's what opens up the book. Um, and I was 25 years old, going on 26. This was my 4th arrest in the 4 years that I was 5 years that I was selling drugs at that point. And, yeah, my life had gone completely upside down. And so I spent a year in rehab, failed out of a couple of rehabs, but a year in rehab, a year in jail. And when I got out, I had to reinvent myself completely. And I couldn't get a job because I had 9 felonies on my record and they were serious felonies. And so that little checkbox, have you ever been convicted of a felony? It's a felony not to report that you've been convicted of a felony. So I was just to check it. Yes, nobody called me back for job interviews. And eventually I realized I had to go back to school. And so I went back to school, studied psychology, got my master's in psychology and my PhD. And my focus really was, we talk in psychology about instead of research, it's me search. A lot of people, we really are all trying to figure out what the heck happened to us, to our loved ones, to our families, to our tribes, to our culture, whatever it is, right? We go and research that. And and that's what I did. And I was focused on behaviors and addictions and compulsions. Why do they happen? How does our brain motivate? How do we learn? And I started out in addictions because that's what happened to me. But what turned out to be the case was that every time I worked with somebody on addictions, it turned out they had relationship issues and they had
Yeah.
job issues and they had mental health issues and they had early developmental parent issues. And so you have to get really good at all these other things if you're going to help anybody with addictions. And and that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. Wow. It's so funny. I just heard the term "me search" from a guest last week. I'd never heard that before, but I love it. It's so spot on, especially hearing everyone's background of how they get involved with this. And I got sober at 21, so it's been like 13 and a half years now. So I relate so much to the first time trying alcohol of being like, okay, this solved all my problems and I need to do this as often as I can to solve all these problems. And mine, I didn't end up in jail, but very well could have. So lots of hospitalizations and all of that. And I remember after getting sober thinking, okay, I cut out the alcohol. Now I'll be able to find a non-abusive boyfriend. I'll be able
Yeah.
to figure out like everything will just switch once I get sober. And that was a big piece, but there was so much. It felt
Oh yeah.
worse. And I remember being like, wait, why does this feel worse?
It always gets worse first. It always
Yeah.
gets worse. I mean, because it's like you removed your security blanket. That's really what you removed.
Yeah, it just felt like a raw nerve just exposed to the world and had like no idea how to have relationships. Like, I remember the first time going dancing, just so many things that just felt like I was a child not knowing how to do anything. And so I think that's a big misconception so many people have is like once you remove, and if we're bringing it back to the realm of relationships, so many people would think, okay, I get rid of the toxic partner or we get rid of this toxic relationship.
Mm,
I'm supposed to feel better all of a sudden. And they're like, oh, I feel worse. So does that mean I'm supposed to go back to this person? It's like, no,
yeah.
there's just a lot going on underneath.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions to take
I
this
know.
in, and I just wanna say to everybody listening right now, um, we we get good at what we practice, and when you don't have great practice at healthy relationships, either because you haven't seen them or because you haven't yourself been in them, then you're just more likely to have unhealthy relationship patterns, right? And that's really hard for people to hear because we want to make it about other people. And I'm not saying that the other people don't play a role, they certainly do, but we don't control them, period. You will never find a partner you control, certainly not fully. Um, I've been with Sophie 21 years and I still struggle with that fact, right? It's like, it's almost in a way, tell ourselves or we think to ourselves, if only this person did things the way I wanted them done, everything would be better. Um, but first of all, that's a moot point. That's just not going to happen. And secondly, it's pretty wishful thinking, right? That's the idea is that I know how to do everything the right way. And so relationships to me are actually the best environment to practice things you're not good at. Yes, it'll create conflict. Yes, there will be friction. Yes, there will be, um, outcomes you have to deal with. But we'll talk about that a lot here today. That's the point.
That's very true, and that was one thing that I was gonna ask you a little bit later, but we can jump to it now. The spheres of influence that you talk about
Mm.
in your book, and it's so interesting because I do feel like we tend to obsess and feel almost addicted to the things that are outside of our
Oh
control.
yeah.
And I don't know, to me, especially when I see someone who's going through a breakup, that like obsession on how is my ex doing? What are they doing? All of these things outside of our control feels like a giant distraction to what's actually going on with us. It feels better in the moment to think about what someone else is up to versus, oh wow, I'm really sad and I feel really empty and betrayed and devastated and all of those non-fun emotions.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I'll go through the sphere of influence concept
Yeah.
first just so everybody understands what we're talking about. So I sort of split up the world into three buckets just to make it simple. And by world, I mean the things I can do, the actions I can take, the thoughts I can have, et cetera, right? Because we're all, I say this in the book, we're all told the world does not revolve around us, but Kendra, your world revolves around you. You wake up in the morning, you look from your eyes, literally the world revolves around you from your standpoint. So we are stuck in this cycle where we're a slave to our own perspective on the world. So three different buckets. Number one, the things you fully control. Number two, the things you have influence over. And number three is the bucket that you have absolutely no influence or control over. I'll start with the third bucket. Think of geopolitics. Think of what's happening in Russia. Think of the economy. Unless you are part of the Fed and you set policy, or you happen to be one of the thousand billionaires in this world where you can call the White House tomorrow and get a meeting and part of this $1.7 billion fund that just got created for people who were put out apparently by the IRS, then you have no control over the economy and geopolitics. And yet, how many people spend hours a day reading about what's happening all over the world, really trying to figure out, where's the economy going? What is it going to do? Hours, 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 hours. So that's the bucket you have absolutely no control or influence over. The middle bucket is things you can influence. So you've got kids, I've got kids. I influence my kids. If you have children, you don't control your children, but you influence them, right? What you do changes the way they show up. If you have a partner that is really in partnership with you, you can influence. Again, not control, right? Think your neighbors, think your family. Most things that have to do with other people, at best, you have influence. At best.
That best, yeah.
That's the next bucket. Final bucket is the things you control. Sadly, it's a very small bucket, right? Your behaviors, although as we'll talk about today, they're not always in explicit control. You're going to have to do some work to even control those fully. Your thoughts, although again, those are kind of at this point pseudo pre-programmed. You're going to have to do some work to change those. Your feelings, right? Those are the things that, and the things you pay attention to. Those are the things that you control, period. And what I find, and I write about this in the book, most people spend most of their time on the bucket they have no influence and no control over. You talk about it as being an escape. Absolutely. Why? Because the first bucket is the hardest to focus on because it requires full accountability. What the first bucket says essentially is I own this situation, and therefore I need to focus on what I can do with my thoughts, with my actions, with my words in order to shift what's happening. And then the middle one is it's the middle bucket on purpose. You should play in it, but you should spend the most time exactly the opposite that most of us do. Most of your time should you spend on things that you can do. If you've got conflict with a partner, instead of constantly thinking about how they can change, the first thing you should think about is what can I do in this situation? And then we will end up talking about things like boundaries, self-talk, right? Practice, as we talked about practicing habits and rituals and ways of being that you haven't to date. So that's just the sphere of influence in general. So everybody can kind of understand this framework we're talking about.
Yeah, yes, it's so true. I mean, I do it on a regular basis without conscious thought and practice of I would like to, and even I feel like the middle bucket, the one of influence, it's like it's usually not influence of our choosing. It's like we do have influence over people, but a lot of the time it's not it's not in the way that we would like it to happen. So,
Yeah.
um and I feel like too what can happen is, in terms of a breakup, it's like we either focus all on what the other person did, or we lump the whole thing into our own bucket of like, oh, this is all my fault that this did not work, when in reality it's in the middle. It's like both people had a part to play in it. So I feel like we either go one direction or the other when we're looking at a breakup, of it's either all my fault or it's all the other person's fault.
Yeah, one of the things I wanna talk about when it comes to the latter, it's all my fault, that you just mentioned, has to do with something we talked about right before the show started. And I wanna argue that when people make it all their fault, they're not talking about the things that they've done or the things that they are doing. They make it about who they are. And
Ooh,
so
yeah.
that's when the shame piece really comes in, right? I am fill in the blank. I always will fill in the blank. It's like this this overarching view of who we are, damaging one, a negative view of who we are, and therefore because of who we are, we will never get what we want. There's a book, not my book, that I'm going to recommend here. I wish I would have read it before I wrote my first book in 2018, because so much of what I speak to has to do with it. But the book is called Mindset. Carol Dweck wrote it, great researcher. But it's the origin. Before Mindset, nobody talked about a mindset. This was the book that started that conversation. But the idea there is between a growth and a fixed mindset. And so sphere of influence was one thing we talked about. This is another really important framework for anybody listening. They've done a ton of research on this by now. People have, to varying degrees, it's like a continuum, but I'll make it binary just for our conversation here. Let's pretend it's two. You have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset about anything. I'll give an example of a fixed mindset. I'm bad at math is a fixed mindset. That one makes sense to people, but I'm good at math is also a fixed mindset. It suggests that you are what you are, you always have been, you always will be. So if you say to yourself, I suck at relationships, I'm bad at relationships, and you have a fixed mindset about it, people with a fixed mindset have a worse self-view and future view of how they're going to do, how happy they're going to be, how successful, how content they're going to be in any area where they have a fixed mindset. And the idea is the stuckness. It's the fact that you believe that you're stuck. You can believe you're not great at relationships right now, but believe that it's trainable and you can become better and you'll feel better about your outcomes in relationships. And then one of the things that comes out of it is if you have a growth mindset. So a growth mindset could be, um, I work hard at math, so I do well in it, right? Because I put the work in. Or I had a lot of exposure to math when I was young, so I got good at it early and I've kept it up. It's the idea that we are moldable, which means that if you do the work, you'll get better. If you stop doing the work, you'll regress. It works both ways. But if you say to yourself, man, I don't know how to be in a good relationship, but it's something I can learn. Just that initial languaging, right? The difference in how you talk to yourself will make you then start paying attention to opportunities to learn, model, be better at relationships, because relationships are a skill. How to be in a good relationship is a skill. I mean, John Gottman has made an entire career out of being able to teach people how to be better at relationships. Now, if you've never heard of a 6 or 8 second hug, I'll just use a really basic classic example from Gottman, then why would you know to have an 8 second hug with your partner in order to connect? Right? I came from a family, Kendra, nobody hugged. We didn't hug. We just, touch was not a thing. Nobody said I love you and nobody hugged. It's not like I didn't understand the concepts, but I had zero practice in it. So if you don't have that coming up, a growth mindset at least lets you know and say, okay, I can learn how to be better at this. And then you'll be more content in the relationships that you're in right now, but also you'll do the work to keep getting better at them.
I love this. Can you talk a little bit about, let's say, if we're doing fixed versus growth mindset in terms of feelings? Because I feel like that's something people struggle with so much. It's like,
Ah,
I feel so devastated and I'm always going to feel like this. This is never going to get better. Can you apply it to feelings, especially after going
yeah,
through something like heartbreak?
sure, sure. Oh, I mean, it's funny, right? Feelings are so tenuous, right? They're like this thing we all experience, but to varying degrees, can we actually name them? and know what to do with the experience. So there's so much that we can go on here. This is now the third time I'm mentioning this specific research in a week. So that's telling me something. But one of my favorite professors when I was at UCLA, he kind of became a colleague later, but he was my social psychology professor when I was in undergrad at UCLA. His name is Matt Lieberman. He and who ended up being his wife, Naomi, did a study. I think it was published in 2007, but about how literally just naming your emotions makes them feel better and less traumatic. Um, Let me explain a little bit why, right? Feelings feel uncontrollable. The the experience of a feeling is one of I'm being overtaken by the feeling in a way. So there are a lot of techniques that show us that this is actually not true. But let's say when somebody's feeling down, they'll say, I'm depressed. We don't think about that languaging too much. But what I'm saying is I am depressed. So I am depression, right? I am the feeling.
Yeah.
But you're also having other feelings. So I'm Kendra feeling depression or feeling sad is very different than I am depressed, right? We're not owning the feeling. And so there's a language, again, we're getting back into language, the way we talk about ourselves. But in meditation, and a lot of people who try meditation or any mindfulness techniques really get freaked out by this next piece. People close their eyes or told their whole life that if you just start meditating, everything will get quiet inside you and you'll be happy. And for most people, what happens with the first time they close their eyes and try to meditate?
It's scary.
It's
Scary in
freaking
there.
scary.
Yeah.
And so they open their eyes and go, "Oh my god, I just had a panic attack. I'm never doing that again for the rest of my life. This is the dumbest idea I've ever heard." But I think that's because it's marketed wrong, or at least the story that people heard about it was wrong. Meditation and mindfulness give you awareness. That's what they give you. Now, if you practice them over time, then every single time you meditate, and I'll give one specific example of meditation from that Lieberman research, every time that you meditate, you will become aware of what's happening inside. Now, if you do the work around the awareness, you will gradually release some of the anxiety and some of the sadness and some of the trauma and some of the pain. And then, yes, over time, it'll get quieter inside. Not quiet, right? Buddha on a mountain in a sunny day, oming his life away, wasn't really fully silent. It was a practice of detachment. Detachment from what? Detachment from our feelings, from our thoughts, from our behavior. How do I get to be a D, having thoughts, having feelings, having experiences, versus being fully immersed in the experience? In meditation, it's called having the observer effect. Can I watch myself feel versus can I be the feeling? Now, I just want to say, look, sometimes it's fun to be in the feeling. Whether you're
Oh, yeah.
crying your eyes out and just letting all that go or having an amazing day and being super elated, do you really want to separate yourself? Well, that's a choice. But there certainly are practices that allow you to just get a little gap. It's not like you're a mile away from your feelings, but just a little distance and say, "Oh, I'm feeling excited." Right? I'm feeling depression. I'm feeling hope. I'm feeling anxious. And by doing that, we can have a little bit more control because we start looking at emotion. This is we call it like urge surfing or wave surfing. You start looking at the emotion as a wave. It's something that has come up because of our perception, because of the experience we had and how we interpret it in our own mind. It's like this wave of emotion has arisen. In Unhooked, I call it activation. You feel it in your body. It's like a wave that just takes over your body. Sometimes we get wrapped up in it like a wave. It kind of washes over us, but you can also ride that wave. You can also say to yourself, "Oh, my my ex or my current partner just said something that got me feeling really activated." I'll get to naming the feelings in a second. I felt really activated. I felt rejected. I felt used. I felt unimportant, right? I felt excited, hopeful. The feelings coming over me, it's temporary. It's gonna last on the order of minutes, most likely, right? But let me experience it instead of trying to push it away. And that's where the naming of the emotion really, really comes in handy. So I mean this in a literal sense with my highest end clients and my people in my online courses. We have this feelings wheel, and I just have everybody print the damn thing and put it on their fridge because most of us don't know what we're feeling. We just know whether we like it or not. But when you start developing the languaging, the research shows us it reduces anxiety and stress and makes you able to do something with the feeling.
So true. And I've noticed lately for me, and I don't know if it's because I have kids that are watching, I'm starting to say my feelings out loud, even when I'm in front of them or not. And it has helped so much of just being
Uh,
like, oh, okay, this, wow, um, I'm feeling worried right now, or I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, or any of those things. And I got the picture of like, I grew up going to the beach a lot. And
uh,
I remember my dad would always say, if you're overtaken by a wave, the best thing you can do is like just stay calm. It's going to pass right over you. But don't, it's like, that's what I feel like, when you fight it, that's when you get discombobulated and you come up the wrong way and you come up out of breath instead of just being able to relax your way through it. So I love the analogy of the wave.
yeah. And by the way, there's even a better. I mean, I love that example in the fact that you got to practice that growing up. There's the example of like the undercurrent, right? Those waves that tow you out into the
Yes, the
ocean.
rip current,
The
right?
riptide, yeah,
Yes.
riptide, yeah. And so that's an example of a really, really substantial current that just takes you under, right? You can, we've all been in those moments. I talked about my breakup when I was 19 years old. I mean, I was depressed for 6 to 9 months straight. First big relationship, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But in the moment, it felt existential. And so you feel like you're being pulled under. In a riptide, the worst thing you can do is fight it.
Yeah.
The best swimmers, best athletes on the face of the planet die about a quarter mile out. They have no problem swimming a quarter mile, but they keep trying to go against that riptide, and they die literally. I mean, you can look research this stuff. Really amazing athletes have died out in the ocean. Why? Because nobody taught them that the way you actually fight a riptide is you let it carry you out. So yeah, float in the water, but you're not resisting. You're going with the flow until the current weakens, and once it weakens, you go parallel to the current, right? And once you swim parallel to the current, swim out 100 feet that way, and then there's no current anyway. Now swim inshore and you'll be all good. Super simple process. It's not complicated, but the same idea for us. Oh, I'm having this really negative feeling. What do we choose to do? And we can switch to this now, Kendra. Like, we try to fix the feeling by controlling the uncontrollable. We try to
Mm.
fix the feeling by trying to make the world around us change. When we go back to those buckets that we just can't do anything about, we don't do the easier thing to do, or the simpler thing at least to do, which is what can I do to change how I'm responding, my feelings, my thoughts, my behaviors. And as we head into that, um, I'll give one kind of starting off point for that discussion. In SPARROW, in the book in Unhooked, everything rests on the fact that you only want to change when things go badly. That
Yeah.
is nobody wants to change when things are good, right? You can be in the worst relationship on the face of the planet, but if you're having good sex and the dates are good, and you're binge watching Netflix at night and it's nice, it doesn't matter how big of an asshole you're with. You're enjoying it because nothing's going wrong. It's the moment something goes wrong that you want to change. That's an opportunity. Stop. Our whole point, and we'll move into this now, hopefully, but like, we need to stop running away from those and recognize them as opportunities. And I'll give kind of a weird starting point that I say to my clients that have bad breakups, right? If you think about it, if you really sit there and think about it, if you and a partner have been at it for a while and it's not working and it's caused both of you pain, separation is the ideal situation. All right. If
Yeah.
somebody comes to you and says, I don't want to be with you anymore, that's a gift in a way, because it's better to know that somebody doesn't want to be with you than to be with somebody who doesn't want to be with you. And then all the stuff that happens if you stick around, right, for years. Um, it just doesn't feel like a gift in the moment.
No.
It doesn't. And that's why I have this orientation. I want everybody to just, I don't want everybody, you do whatever you want to do. I urge everybody to look back at your life and look at most painful moments in your life. And odds are that if you're listening to this right now, the most painful moments in your life have become the biggest growth moments you've ever had. And if you can start orienting in that way, then we get to a place where we're at least better while we're going through the pain. It's saying, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm not exactly sure what it is yet. And I feel like crap going through it, but let me go through the process of learning.
And I think that's why when you brought up the fixed versus growth mindset, it really resonated so much because I think having fixed versus growth when you're going through let's face it, like a change most of us don't want to happen, even if we were the one that initiated the relationship. Like we're all
Yeah.
in relationships because we want them to work and we're assuming that they're going to work for a long period of time. But yes, if you're in that fixed mindset and not even, and it's not even like, okay, let me look at what the blessings are right now. It's like that.
No.
It's just knowing, okay, this feels really shitty right now, but I trust that something's gonna come from this.
Yeah. Yeah, look, and you said we want relationships because we want them to work out long term. I think that's true, but I think what we want is we wanna feel good, we wanna feel connected, we wanna feel cared about, we wanna feel, part of, right? That's what we
Mhm.
really want. Um, and the relationships are the way we think we're gonna get that. But if the relationship is serving the opposite role, then it's not getting us what we want anyway, right? Like, I've known a lot of clients and I've worked and I've had friends where the relationship becomes isolating and it becomes something you have to defend all the time. And so it's not connecting you, it's not expanding you, it's not making you better, it's making you smaller and making your life smaller and making you less able to connect with your partner and other people. And I think that's why we end up kind of flipping over ourselves trying to change it is because what we want is the connection. What we want is the expansion. What we want is, having somebody to come back to and feeling like we're part of.
Yes, I haven't thought about that before, but yes, like because I do think some people get so stuck in what does it mean if I'm not in a relationship? Like that identity that gets wrapped up in that, and then that fear of once that goes away. But yes, if you go back to what do you actually want out of a relationship and what's the underlying need for that, and was that person even providing that for you? That's a really good way to look at it.
The person in the relationship, right? It's all relationships are kind of this duality of the two people, classic relationships, two people um, that are trying. I always think people are trying their best, if I'm honest. It's just what somebody else's best is may not be what's in your best interest.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard to get to a place where you can depersonalize it in that way of, like
Yes.
I also believe that too. Like most people are trying their best and most people don't have bad intention or ill will. They're doing what makes sense to them in their own thoughts at being in the center of their own world kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
it feels very hard to not take it as I am bad. I am not a good partner because this person said I don't want to be with you anymore. So that's hard to separate.
100%. And the way we tend to get over that, the way we tend to overcome that challenge has nothing to do with the other person and is all work that we have to do ourselves.
Yeah.
In case it's not clear to anybody listening, there is no partner out there that is going to make you feel complete. They do not exist. They will never show up. There are partners that will add to your life and will make your life better. That's not what I'm saying. But there's no partner that will fill a void that you have about who you are and what your worth is. That is work we have to do. The unfortunate reality we can talk about is trauma bonding. We can talk about as like codependent relationships and all these labels that have been given them. But in reality, your puzzle piece will fit into another puzzle piece. And if you're currently in a place where you're discombobulated and you're all over the place and you're unclear about who you are, what you want, you'll get another somebody who's unclear about what they want and who they are and where they're going because that's the puzzle piece that's going to fit where you are right now. And that goes back to how post breakup or in the middle of a relationship, we try to look for other people to change when we haven't done the work. I can tell you this, just a quick little aside. I certainly had to do a lot of work in our relationship, but then, we had kids. We got 3 kids, Sophie and I just recently in the last few years, we've now got a 15, 13, and 7-year-old. It turned out I was not a good dad. Um, and for my boys, much more than for my girl. Um, and I never had a fathering really model to me. My dad worked all the time growing up, and so I became very independent, which works as a guy working and trying to make money and be successful. Doesn't work that well in terms of connecting, especially with my boys. Like I said, I was very judgmental, super strict, like all these. Anyway, a lot of things. Um, I can blame my 13-year-old all I want, or I can just go do some work on how to be a better dad, right? And it's far from complete. I'm far from done. It'll keep challenging me, but at least I've done enough work now to say, hold on. I mean, is he an asshole sometimes? 100%. but am I expecting teenagers that are not assholes? Is that the
Yeah.
place I'm trying to go to? Like, am I trying to change humanity, or am I
Yeah.
trying to change my relationship with my son? And if it's the latter, then I go back to the sphere of influence and what can I do
Mm.
to go get the training? So I had to put hours. I probably put a couple of 100 hours into learning how to be a better dad, right? And it's that happens in every relationship you have.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit more about the you mentioned the Sparrow like framework, but can you talk a little bit about that like how we actually start, those hours that you did, like what do those look like for if we're trying to
Yeah, 100%. So I'll
change
start
taking
like I
it.
do in the book. I'll do a little plug because I'm really bad at this. But it turns out that when I talk about the book, more people buy the book. So the book is Unhooked. It's weird, right? When you actually talk about the thing,
I
people
I know.
know that it happened. So the book is Unhooked, and it talk about compulsive behaviors in general. But I want you to know 90% of our behaviors are automatic and near compulsive. So I'm not talking addiction. I'm talking technology use. I'm talking sex. I'm talking relationships. I'm talking success and work, right? All those things. If you're checking your email obsessively, guess what? You're compulsive about your email, right? Like I'm talking broadly. Um, and so Sparrow is just an acronym I'll go into here in a second. But after working with thousands of people, I try to analyze a really simple framework to help people change behavior. So the first thing I realized was people only want to change when they had a negative outcome. And so outcome is at the end. SPARROW stands for stimulus, perception, activation, response, outcome. I'll go through the whole thing, but outcome is where it starts. And after I go through the explanation of the method, when you start practicing it, I go to the outcome. Why? If you want to change right now, I want you to think, if you're listening to this, go through this exercise with us live. I want you to think about something really bad that just recently happened to you. Don't run away from it. Something bad. It could be a breakup, but it could be a fight with your mom. It could be a bad day at work and you got a bad review by your boss. Whatever it is, think about a negative outcome. Okay. Why? Because the reason it's negative is something that you care about didn't work out. That's why it feels bad, right? A negative review by a boss you're about to leave in a week because you got a better job, nobody cares about. You wouldn't care about it, right? If a girlfriend or a boyfriend you've tried to break up with for 6 months finally broke up with you, you're not upset about it. Negative outcomes are opportunities. They're showing you that you care about something and it didn't work out well. Sparrow on top works with something I call the EAT change loop. And so EAT stands for explore, accept, transform. The moment something bad happens in your life, most of us try to push it aside. We talked about when I started drinking and smoking weed, right? I feel weird. Let me take a drink of alcohol. I don't feel weird anymore. Negative outcome is I felt weird. The behavior was the drinking. So now it's like, okay, something bad happened in my life. First is explore. What am I going to explore? Why? Why did this feel bad? You don't run away from it, you sit with it. Okay. So now we'll go into Sparrow. Stimulus. Something always got you started. I'll go into relationships because that's what we're talking about here. You passed by your ex's house. They butt dialed you. You saw their name on a post. You saw a picture of them with somebody new. Somebody in a different dinner that you're hanging out with mentioned their name on the other side of the table, and it started. So it starts with a stimulus. But we don't respond to the actual trigger to the stimulus. We respond to the perception of the stimulus that we have. So, stimulus, perception next. What does that mean? We all have beliefs that we filter the world through, right? I just talked for a second about the fact that I didn't come from a house where there was a lot of touching and a lot of people saying, I love you. Well, so if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I don't say I love you because it's not something I practice, to me, it's par for the course. Obviously, I love you. I don't have to say it. I grew up in a family where that's the way it is. But if my partner grew up in a house where you said I love you to each other 17 times a day, like my house kind of is at this point, um, I may feel like I'm far disconnected and like I'm e- not empathetic and like I can't express my feelings. Why? Because this big gap, what they expect and what I expect, right? So it's our beliefs that drive how we respond to a stimulus. I'll give the clearest example of what I just said here. You're sitting at dinner and somebody mentions your ex. If you love your ex or a really good friend at this point and you wish them all the best and you hear they're dating somebody new, the perception might be like, oh, I'm so glad they finally found somebody. If you think you're a piece of shit and you're going to end up alone for the rest of your life and your ex was the best chance you ever had of living your dream life and they now
Mhm.
got engaged, you think your life is over.
Yeah,
Same
that's true.
conversation, two completely different reactions. The reason the perception is important is perception leads to activation. Now, everybody here, we won't get into how memories are formed and all that stuff. It's in the book, but we just don't have time here. It's the belief you have about the event that creates this, the physical and emotional activation. The feelings you have in your body and in your mind are driven by the belief you have. What does that mean? You may hear that conversation at the dinner table, and then your heart starts beating fast. Your palms get sweaty. No spaghetti on your sweater yet, but that'll come later. And you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out, oh my God, why am I all getting all clammy and my heart's racing and my breath is getting shallow? You feel like you're not good enough and your partner just found their fiance, and you start feeling like this is anxiety and stress and pain, right? That's what my body's doing. But if you're really excited for your partner, you may also feel your heart racing. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so happy for them, right? Pretty similar activation, completely different interpretation.
Yes.
You're anxious, freaked out, having a panic attack, or oh my God, I can't wait to call them and congratulate them, right? Now, the reason that's important is the reactions, the things we do because of the activation that our perspective of the trigger cause. So if you're really excited, you may call them up. If you're having a panic attack, you may order 3 shots and do them in a row at the dinner table. Why? Because you don't want to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the negative event, and we go through the loop again. And so what I urge people to do always, and this is the hardest thing, right? We've now heard this a lot of times. So over the last decade, I feel like it's come up more and more and more. But in order to do this work, you have to start getting more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to sit with the discomfort because the discomfort is a signal. But if you can get that through your head, if you can just get yourself to say, okay, I can run away from this feeling in 30 minutes, but let me just use the next 30 minutes to figure out what the heck happened. When did I start feeling this way? What did it mean to me? That's a perspective. How did I feel in my body? What did I choose to do because of the way I felt in my body? How did that lead to the outcome? Now I have a little map and I have these 3 or
Mm.
4 different ways that I can intervene. And so that's kind of the model overall.
That is such a good way. And that happens so often with the listeners of this where they see something, they hear something. I mean, driving by their car, like seeing their car on the road, it's like it can just send us into that. And, as we're nearing the end, I wanted to touch on the topic of shame. And I think, particularly in Sparrow, it's like, we can go through this, we see the outcome. We don't like how we reacted. It's like
Yeah.
we had a reaction that we were not proud of, and that led to an outcome we're not proud of. Let's use the example of you're at the dinner, you hear about it, you do
Yep.
order the 3 shots, and then you drunk dial your ex and word vomit all of the things that
Sure.
are holding in. And then you feel really shameful about it, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that also creates like another layer to this. And
100%.
in my experience, when you feel shame about something, you're more likely to do it again. I don't know if that's what
Oh,
your
yeah.
experience is, but I think, the shame of that, instead of just looking at it of like, okay, this is what happened. How can we change the things in the middle here? But I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about shame in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So shame fits into the eat loop. So
Okay.
explore, accept, transform. So you're taking us to accept right now. So explore. Oh crap! I can remember when the thing started because people forget the trigger. When you had a really
Yeah.
bad night, often because the whole point of the 3 shots is to not remember the trigger, right? That was the whole point. So the next day you sit there, you're like, oh my God, I called him. I Now let me analyze it. Oh God, that started when Rochelle was talking about the thing, and I found out he's maybe getting engaged. Like, what right? And you work through the whole thing. That's explore. Immediately, most of us, when we're first new at this, Kendra, we go into judgment, self judgment.
Oh
Immediately,
yeah.
shame is the first thing that hits. Why? It's the age old thing we go through in our head. I should have known better. What is wrong with me? I'm such an idiot.
Why do
Now
I
he's
still
never gonna
care
talk
so
to me.
much?
Why
Yeah.
do I still care? I know better. Like which is all self-judgment. It's just all self-judgment. Accept is the place where I would say most people get stuck in, sometimes for months. And I'm saying that so that people understand that when you're stuck in this, it's okay that you're stuck in it. There's just work you have to do. Again, in the book, I talk about a lot of different techniques. I'll name a few here. compassion for self and other. So there are a lot of self-compassion practices and other compassion practices. I didn't invent most of them. Uh, they're out there. We have to, first of all, accept is in the name. The first thing we have to land in, okay, this is what happened. It is the reality I'm living through right now. I have to acknowledge that this is what happened and sit with it. I can't erase. Nobody here has a time machine. Maybe AI will invent one soon, but as of right now, I can't change the past. So acceptance and acknowledgement of what happened. Number one. Number two, why am I feeling this way about what happened? Well, first of all, I feel wrong. I feel like I am a problem, right? Like we talked about with shame. So that's self-compassion. There's normalization, then there's, acceptance of the fact that I'm doing my best here and that things will continue improving and that this is temporary. That's part of self-compassion. The thing that's hard for a lot of people to hear, you also need compassion for others. So we get trapped, this concept of resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We've all heard that concept before, but what does that mean? Well, if I want to release the pain that I have from somebody else, it's my job. Back to this fear of influence. I'm the only one who can release it, right? They can't release it. They might have released it for themselves already. Compassion for others is just being able to say, you know what, regardless of what the breakup was like, regardless of what they did in the relationship, I feel compassion for them and I want for them to have whatever positive life experience they need to have. So compassion. And I understand that they were doing their best and that they always are, etc. Compassion for self and others, but then forgiveness for self and others. I'm going to butcher this right off the bat right now, but the hopa hopa no no, the self, like the forgiveness for others,
Yes.
Hawaiian ritual is one of the ones that I like using with clients. But there are other forgiveness rituals for self. Forgive yourself for the drunk dial and the shots. I was also doing my best, and I need to move forward, and I'll learn better. But also forgiving others. And forgiving is not forgetting. Forgiving does not mean you have to reestablish a relationship because now you're all good and you have to be friends with each other. It just means cutting the cord of that emotional tie. And so acceptance is a lot because there's all this work that has to be done. And most of us going back, and it's a good way to kind of close this, is the shame we feel about ourselves is never going to be fixed by somebody else. It's that acceptance work in the
Yeah.
middle that allows you to sit there and go, oh my God, wait, I can be a good person who does stupid things. That both of those can be true at the same time. I can be a worthwhile person to be in relationships and not really know how to do it right now, right? All of that can be true at the same time. And yesterday and the drinking was proof of that. Okay, got it. Now, so explore, accept, transform. Once you've landed in some version of acceptance, the next thing is, how can I change? And that's, I think, what gets people out of shame is the idea that there is a better future, going back to growth mindset. If I keep practicing this and not running away from it, I can get better and I will get better over time.
I mean, I've done this so many times of skipping the acceptance part and just going from like, "Oh, I did
Well,
this. I need to do this." And then it feels so much harder to change anything because I have not accepted it. And then the shame just gets worse because I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be doing this instead of that, but I can't do that. So I'm just like a bad, I'm just not a good person or I'm
yeah, I
not
talk
good at
about it. I talk
this.
about literally that example of the book because trying to do transform without accept is like saying there's a crappy part of me, but I'm just going to push it to the side and let it live in the corner. And I'm going to pretend it's not there and I'm going to fix the rest of me. But this is not news to anybody who's older than 18 probably at this point. But that side is going to peek its head back out. And if you don't figure out how to deal with it, you cannot run away from that monster. The only thing you can do is make peace with it. And now you're never going to be perfect, right? You're never going to get it to completely disappear. These are parts of who you are based on how you grew up and the experiences you had, but you got to learn how to play with them.
Yes. Yes. I could keep talking to you for a long time. This has been such a great
Yeah, this has been fun.
conversation. So, yes, I want you to very explicitly plug your book right now because I think there's I mean, I feel like you and I could have talked for so much longer and there's so much more in the book. So, can you talk about your book, where people can find you? I know you have online courses. So,
Yep. So the book is Unhooked. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the places that you normally buy books. There's actually a weird glitch. I don't know if this will still be true. The soft cover is coming out so they did hardcover first. The soft cover is coming out in about like 3 weeks. And I don't know if it's because of that, but the hardcover, they're, like, trying to get rid of the hardcover right now. So it's literally, like, 12 bucks for the hardcover. It's cheaper than the softcover. Go get it while it's
Yeah,
there. I love holding a hardcover book better than a
me too.
softcover, but they're normally so expensive. So that's happening right now. If you want help and you're having compulsive patterns, I have an online Ignited, platform where we provide help. It's actually the only way other than my super high-end programs to work with me personally, but we also have 4 or 5 other coaches that I've trained. So we have relationship groups, we have trauma groups, we have processing groups, we have a lot of different groups to do, and you can also get some one-on-one coaching for really cheap. I think the lowest level program is like 80 bucks a week or something. It's not
Wow,
expensive, and
that's
it's
awesome.
that way on purpose, so you can really get a ton of help. um, I'm really passionate about this, Kendra, because I know what it feels like to get stuck. Literally waking up every day going, I don't need to do this anymore. I can live a totally different life. Everything just needs to change. I know exactly what to do. And then by like 3 p.m., you're living a deja vu moment from a week ago and you have no idea what the hell happened.
Yeah.
So I'm in this to help people change for themselves.
Yeah. No, I can feel the passion and I appreciate it. And I'm laughing right now because I know that feeling so well.
We
So
all do.
yeah, yes. Thank you, Adi. This has been really fun. I would love to have you back another time.
Yeah.
And
Anytime.
thank
I'd
you
love to.
for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Kendra. Thanks everybody for listening.